Imagine waking up one morning and the world you knew is gone. The headlines aren't about sports or local festivals anymore. They scream of invasions, of cities falling, of a shadow stretching across the globe. This was the reality for an entire generation. This was World War II. Spark, September 1st, 1939. Over 1.5 million German troops storm into Poland. Music swells slightly. It was a new kind of warfare. The Blitzkrieg, the Lightning War. Tanks, planes, and infantry moving with a speed and brutality the world had never seen. Britain and France, bound by treaty, declared war. The spark had become a fire and the world held its breath. Sound of Stuka dive bomber sirens, distant explosions. For a while, it seemed like nothing could stop the Axis powers. Nation after nation fell. Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and then the unthinkable France. Britain stood alone, a bastion of defiance. Its cities pummeled night after night during the Blitz. Churchill's "We shall fight on the beaches" speech layered faintly. The image of Nazi flags flying over Paris sent a shockwave across the planet, roared defiance into the radio waves, sound of his words a lifeline for a terrified population. We shall never surrender, and they didn't. Prime Minister Winston, pilots of the Royal Air Force, the few, scrambled into the skies day after day, fighting for the very survival of their island. Incorporating Russian-style motifs, but the war was a monster with many heads. In 1941, Hitler made a fatal mistake. He turned on his supposed ally and invaded the Soviet Union. This opened the Eastern Front, a theater of war so vast and barbaric it's almost impossible to comprehend. Millions upon millions fought and died in the brutal Russian winter, in battles for cities like Stalingrad that became grinding machines for human life. Sound of distant naval guns, planes, and the Pearl Harbor attack announcement. And then, on a quiet Sunday morning, December 7th, 1941, the fire leaped across the Pacific. America, the sleeping giant, was brutally awakened. The war was now truly global, a catastrophic conflict fought on the deserts of Africa, the jungles of Southeast Asia, Pearl Harbor, and the vast, unforgiving oceans of the world. The tide began to turn, slowly, painfully, in North Africa, in the Atlantic, on the endless Russian steppe. June 6, 1944, D-Day, the largest amphibious invasion in history. Allied soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy, a heroic, terrifying gamble to open a new front and then liberate Europe. Sound of machine gun fire, shouting, and waves crashing, then fading into a more somber, reflective tone. What followed was the slow, bloody collapse of the Third Reich. The liberation of concentration camps revealed a horror that words can never truly describe. The Holocaust, a systematic genocide that forever stained the conscience of humanity. Becoming melancholic and poignant. Finally, in 1945, the guns fell silent, first in Europe, then months later in the Pacific after the atomic bombs brought a terrifying and controversial end to the war. The world was in ruins, but it was at peace. Over 70 million people were dead. Entire cities were rubble. An entire generation was scarred. It's easy to see these events as just dates and names in a history book, but they were real. It was the story of ordinary people forced to do extraordinary and sometimes terrible things. It's a story of unimaginable loss, but also of incredible courage and sacrifice. A story that reminds us just how fragile peace really is, and why we must never, ever forget. Out, leaving only the sound of a gentle wind. Music fades out.